Hello, everybody. You are watching our Vegas Voice family. I'm Dan Roberts, the publisher of the Vegas Voice, and I have the great pleasure of hosting this segment along with all the people that make the Vegas Voice the best publication in the United States. Our guest today is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. I'm joined by our nightlife editor, Sam Wagmeister. Sam, thank you for being our first guest.
It's exciting.
Yeah, to say the least. You've been with the magazine for how long?
It's going on 10 years.
Yeah, isn't that amazing how time flies like that?
I've enjoyed it, every bit of it.
And yet, tell us a little bit about your background, because when how about the first time we met? Because it wasn't like you were an entertainment writer.
No, actually my background is, I'm originally from Chicago, and in my youth, I started in high school as a switchboard operator for the Chicago Tribune, midnight to 7 a.m. I got to know some of the people there, and I wanted to get into journalism, so they helped me, and I eventually moved up the ladder, and I ended up covering the Democratic, that infamous Democratic convention with all the tear gas and the riots. And I wanted to make that my career, but that was at a time when 2 of the 4 Chicago newspapers folded, and being in my youth, I was a low man on the totem pole. There were a lot of experienced reporters and journalists who were out on the street looking for work. So I lost out to some of them, and rightfully I should have. And I went on to a different career, first in advertising, then advertising sales, and then sales, and eventually ended up in Las Vegas. And I'd been a realtor for a while. And I noticed that my client base was my generation. So I joined a networking group of people who provided services to the senior community, the 55-plus community, and that's where you and I met.
We met, yeah.
And I remember exactly the discussion we had. I looked at you one day and I said, I really envy you. And you said, why? And I said, well, if I could do anything, I'd be a journalist. And you said, what would you write about?
Yeah.
And I said, local entertainment. And you said, give me 500 words once a month.
And that was it.
That was it. I mean, I remember that so well.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, if not the ironic thing, is after you were part of the Vegas Voice for a couple of months, you came up with a chart that we're going to show. Tell us a little bit about that chart, because I got to tell you, about 95% of it came true.
Well, I was in the office one Friday night, and I was a sales manager in real estate, and I was working with a lot of new agents who I was working with them on their business plans. Their business plans are, what are your goals? How are you going to get there? And I'm working on these, and I'm reading these over and making notes. And I took a break, and I was relaxing, and it was late on a Friday night, and I started thinking about what I was writing for the Vegas Voice, my next column. And I started thinking about the Vegas Voice. I said, what is our business plan? What are our goals? And I looked at it and I said, we've got some interesting columns, but it's all over the board. What do our readers want? And having worked with the 55 plus and bringing people in who wanted to live here, they said, why should I live here? I started talking about the entertainment community, which I had accidentally become acquainted with through my business, delightfully acquainted with. And so as I took my clients out and showed them the town, what the town could give them, I realized there were a lot of entertainment opportunities that were not on the Strip, that were economical, were fun, were exciting, were lively. And I realized a lot of our people want to know, what am I going to do on a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night or a Thursday night that I can afford to go to regularly instead of sitting home and watching TV? And so I made a list of things, and I made a list of resources, I made a list of venues, I made a list of entertainers, and then I said, how can we put this all together? And that's where I came up with my organizational chart.
The amazing thing about it, all kidding aside, is that you were the one that said we should be doing shows, we should be doing radio broadcasts, and even what we're doing now with video podcast. I mean, you were way ahead of your time.
Well, in real estate, you have to stay ahead of the time and figure out where you're going to be marketing, and that's the whole thing. And the idea is to engage our readers, not to just have them pick it up, read it, and put it down. It was, well, I want to go to the Vegas Voice event. I want to be part of this Vegas Voice thing, and I wanted them to use us as a resource.
Well, speaking of a resource, that's a nice lead-in. You started going to shows, you saw the Bronx Wanderers, and they did something in terms of your quote that was really the first quote ever for the Vegas Voice. Talk a little bit about that, because that's really fantastic.
Well, I had originally written about them for the Vegas Voice when a friend of mine, the late Grant Griffin, said he was bringing him down to the South Point. And so he had some videos for me to watch, and I was very impressed. My quote in one of my stories was in one of my columns, and I wrote about once a year. In fact, my next column will be about them to an extent. But it was, if you like the Jersey Boys, you'll love the Bronx Wanderers. And now it's in all of their advertising. It's up in lights on the strip. It's on those billboard trucks that are going down the strip. It's in their rat cards. It's in everything they use. And I must modestly say I'm thrilled, excited, delighted, and thankful.
And obviously, we're thrilled for the magazine. But something else that it kills me, but I have to give you credit for, is that you came to our entertainment editor, Evan Davis, and myself, and said there's these group of guys that's called the Folk Legacy Trio. Oh. And I think you should discuss it, because we had 2 shows with them, sold out, and our readers loved it. Talk about those guys for a bit.
Well, and this comes back to the Vegas Voice. I got an email one day, and I had been under the weather really badly. I was suffering from a bad hip, which the hip is now somewhere else, and I have a new one.
There you go.
But I got an email from a man named George Grove, who lived in Green Valley here in Henderson. And he said, I'm having some friends over. We're going to jam in my living room one night, and we'd like to invite you. Well, I didn't respond as quickly as I should have. And 2 days later, and I was going to decline. 2 days later, he sent me another email that basically said, I'm not kidding. So I felt compelled. Now I've disrespected him. I have to show respect. And so one miserable, rainy, dark, cold November night that's bad for a bad hip, I got in the car and hauled my fanny over to his house, and I sat down, and oh my goodness, it was just one of probably the 2 most electrifying nights I've seen locally. George had been with the Kingston Trio for 41 years. His partner, one of his partners, Rick, had been with the Kingston Trio for 12 years, and the other member, Jerry Siggins, had been with a group called the Diamonds for 25 years, lead singer, and he took me back to my youth. The songs they did were Little Darlin' and The Stroll, that big American Bandstand hit that was recreated in the movie Grease. And they started doing songs that I would listen to in high school, Green, Green Grass at Home, If I Had a Hammer. It was, and I realized Las Vegas has every type of music except folk music.
And they put the show together. Was it like one of the first few times they were together that they actually performed?
Actually, it wasn't, but it was. They had done a couple of little coffee houses for friends in California. But Evan, I went to Evan and I said, Evan Davis, you've got to put these guys in a show. And he said, I've got a variety show coming up, but we're fully booked. Yeah. But he squeezed them in. Sun City McDonald Ranch. They did 3 songs. The audience was singing along. The audience was clapping. The audience...
They wouldn't let him off. I know. We were there. We were shocked by the reaction.
They were yelling more.
Yes, positively.
So Evan dedicated 2 more shows to them, sold out Sun City McDonald Ranch, sold out the Italian American Club. The audiences were electrified. I mean, they hadn't heard this music in years. The guys have great rapport, wonderful sense of humor. They sound...
Who had a better time, though? The audience or the folk legacy trio?
Me.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Me.
But you know...
because they're such great people, and it meant so much for me.
Yeah. Okay. And then the last story we have time for is that you have a wonderful tale about Cindy Williams. And for those who don't know, and everyone knows, she was on Penny Marshall and Laverne and Shirley. But you tell your story, because it was one of your articles, and it got tremendous feedback.
Well, Cindy Williams was, when we're teenager boys, we always have our crushes. And, she was at the top of my list, her and the gal who played Bob Newhart's wife on his first show, The Dark.
Suzanne Pleshette?
Suzanne Pleshette, yeah. I always said, if either of them call, I'm running away.
Yeah. And
I fell in love with Cindy Williams in American Graffiti. And son of a gun, my friend Alan Glist and his wife Kathy Glist brought Cindy Williams to town in their hit show, Menopause the Musical, and had an opportunity to meet her, and we did a little story about her, and she's just delightful, and she's charming, and then time went on, and I had another column coming up, and the column, I submitted it, and it wasn't right. And you called me and said, I don't think we can use this. Can you come up with another column? So I said, yeah, I can. I want to. And so I had an idea. Menopause, the musical, had just celebrated their 5,000th performance.
Right.
So I called Cindy and I said, Cindy, I want to write a story about the 5,000th performance, but I always like to put a little spin on my stories, go a different route. So I said, do you remember when we were at that party together? And she said, yes. I said, you remember when I said goodbye, we kissed? She said, yes. I said, I want to call it, I Kissed Cindy Williams. Is that okay with you? And she said, only if you say at the end of the column, I kissed you back.
Yeah.
And so I did.
And, it's amazing how a bunch of seniors like ourselves, second or third careers, put all this together. And, like you, it really is a lot of fun.
Oh, it is. I think that's the only column that I ever wrote in the first person.
Yeah.
I don't like doing that. I, me. I always like talking about them. So, but she's delightful. The show's delightful. She's on a hiatus now, but yeah.
And again, we're out of time. And Sam, thank you for being here, obviously. And we want to thank everyone for watching our Vegas Voice family. By the way, if you have any questions or would like more information about the Vegas Voice or Mr. Wagmeister, please give me a call at 702-251-4441, or you can email me at dan@thevegasvoice.net. Until next time, this is Dan Roberts wishing you all the best.